The pounding on the front door wasn't casual. It wasn't the knock of a neighbor stopping by or kids playing a prank. It was deliberate, heavy, like someone driving nails into my chest with each blow. Picture frames rattled against the walls until one tilted sideways. My whole body tensed before I even heard the words. "Open the door, Mr. Thompson. Your wife is under arrest." Oakwood Heights wasn't the kind of place where you expected scenes like this. At that hour, sprinklers usually whispered across trim lawns, kids finished homework under warm kitchen lights, and neighbors waved from porches with mugs of coffee or glasses of wine. The street was supposed to be peaceful, but the voice outside cut through it all, cold, commanding, and suffocating. I pulled the door open, bracing myself for whatever storm had arrived. 3 men stood shoulder to shoulder on my porch, uniforms crisp and spotless, brass pins gleaming. Their pistols were already drawn and pointed, steady as stone. Sunglasses hid their eyes, though the sun had long since dipped behind the rows of houses. Not one of them smiled. Not one offered even the courtesy of explaining. They just stood there, silent and suffocating, like wolves at the edge of firelight. The man in front stepped closer, his boots grinding against gravel. His tone was clipped mechanical, as if rehearsed. "Step aside, sir. She's coming with us." For a moment, I froze. My mind raced 1,000 miles an hour. Why Amy? Why tonight? These men stood like they already owned the outcome, like their guns were the final word. But what they didn't realize was that my wife wasn't someone who cowered in shadows. She wasn't some defenseless target they could haul away. Amy carried her own kind of authority, the kind that wasn't printed on fake badges or borrowed from HOA power trips. She had a uniform stitched with real weight, one that could silence a room before she ever spoke. And the moment she stepped forward, everything they thought they knew about control would collapse. 3 months earlier, Oakwood Heights looked like paradise when we first arrived. Signing the papers for the house on Maple Drive felt like closing the door on years of restless moving. Finally, a neighborhood that seemed calm, safe, and permanent. Trimmed lawns lined the streets. Kids pedaled bicycles down the sidewalks, and neighbors waved with practiced smiles. It was so perfect it almost felt staged. But that polished surface hid cracks. From the start, the HOA made itself known. Letters appeared in our mailbox. So often it felt like junk mail on steroids. They came cloaked in legal language but dripped with pettiness. Your mailbox is 2 inches too tall. Your hedges are not uniformly trimmed. And then, the kicker, a $90 fine for a simple garden flag. It was a red, white, and blue flag with an eagle soaring across it. Patriotic, bold, beautiful. The kind of flag most people would hang proudly without a second thought. But in Oakwood Heights, it was deemed disruptive to community visual harmony. Barbara, the HOA president, delivered the message personally, clipboard always in hand, lips pursed, marching down the sidewalks like she owned every inch of property. She wielded her position like a general commanding troops. Power, no matter how petty, fueled her. Amy never snapped back. She'd laugh softly, shake her head, and mutter, "They have no idea who they're messing with." At first, I thought it was just her way of venting. But I noticed the way she filed the letters neatly in a folder, never angry, never rattled, just patient. She was waiting, preparing, because what Barbara and her clipboard army didn't know, what none of our neighbors knew, was that Amy wasn't just my wife. She wasn't just a homeowner. She held a position that commanded true power, the kind that couldn't be bullied with fines or fake rules. She didn't flaunt it, never used it in small talk, but I could tell. She was ready, and she was waiting for the day they pushed too far. That day came sooner than either of us expected. The knock. When the pounding shook our door that night, I knew Barbara had escalated. Petty fines and nasty letters were one thing, but men at my doorstep in perfect uniforms, pistols raised, that was another level entirely. The uniforms looked too crisp, too polished. Not a speck of dirt, not a wrinkle out of place. Their boots shined like they'd just come out of a box, and their badges caught the porch light with an unnatural gleam. But the guns, they were real enough. That was all most people would see. "Step aside, sir," the leader repeated, his voice like a machine. "Your wife is under arrest." Amy's footsteps came steady down the hall. No panic, no hesitation. When she appeared, my heart nearly stopped. Not from fear, but from the sight of her in full pressed uniform. She hadn't been lounging in pajamas. She'd been waiting for this. The three so-called officers froze. Their eyes darted from the badge on her chest to the stripes on her sleeve to the calm, immovable authority in her expression. For the first time, silence heavier than their weapons filled the porch. "Ma'am," one of them stammered, "you'll need to come with us." Amy didn't blink. She didn't raise her voice. She simply said, "Drop your guns." The command sliced the night like glass. The men shifted uneasily, confidence leaking away. Barbara's silhouette appeared down the sidewalk. Clipboard clutched like a scepter, lips curled into a smug grin. She thought her grand play had worked. That Amy was cornered, defeated. But when the men hesitated, when Amy's badge glinted beneath the porch light, that grin slid right off her face. Amy repeated, "Drop your guns." This time, her tone had the weight of authority earned, not borrowed. The man on the right cracked first, lowering his pistol carefully onto the porch railing. The second followed, hands raised in surrender. Only the leader held out longer, jaw clenched tight, but Amy never flinched. She held his gaze until, at last, the weapon clattered to the ground. "Badges," she ordered next. One by one, the men unclipped their shiny props and tossed them at her feet. The truth was plain. They weren't real. No state seal. No numbers. Just fakes. Barbara's voice cracked through the night. "What are you doing?" "Arrest her. She's a criminal. She refused to pay her fine." Amy's voice boomed like thunder. "These men aren't officers. They're imposters. And you, Barbara, sent them." Curtains twitched up and down the street. Porch lights flickered on. Neighbors peeked out. Phones raised to capture the scene. The HOA president's secret move had become a public spectacle. Barbara sputtered. But the image of her hired imposters disarmed and exposed was louder than any excuse she could make. And I realized in that moment, Amy had been waiting for this all along. The imposters stood frozen, hands trembling in the porch light. The street had gone unnervingly quiet, except for the sound of Barbara's shrill voice slicing through the air like nails on glass. "You fools," she screeched. "Pick up your weapons. She can't do anything to us. She's just another homeowner. Do it now." But the men didn't move. Not an inch. Their confidence had melted the second Amy revealed her uniform. Their weapons lay abandoned, their fake badges scattered across the porch like cheap toys. They had no ground left to stand on. Amy took a single step forward, her presence swallowing the night. "You impersonated federal officers. You brandished firearms to intimidate. And you conspired with this woman to commit a crime." Barbara's smugness cracked. Her eyes darted between the neighbors recording everything on their phones, the imposters shrinking back in shame, and Amy, whose calm authority made every word sound like law carved into stone. "This isn't your neighborhood anymore," Amy continued, her voice steady. "This is my jurisdiction." Barbara sputtered, "Why, you can't. This is an HOA matter." Amy's radio crackled before Barbara could finish. A voice came sharp and clear. "Unit 14, status?" Amy pressed the mic to her lips without breaking eye contact. 3 armed impersonators detained. Requesting backup. Possible conspiracy involving HOA board president. Send local deputies immediately. The blood drained from Barbara's face. The backup arrives. Within minutes. The quiet street was flooded with red and blue lights. Sheriff's cruisers screeched to a stop, and real deputies poured out, weapons drawn. Not like the fakes with their too polished boots, but with the gritty confidence of officers who knew what they were doing. The imposters dropped to their knees without being asked, hands laced behind their heads. Deputies cuffed them swiftly, reading them their rights while neighbors whispered in disbelief. Barbara tried to bolt. Clipboard clutched her chest. She darted down the sidewalk like a cornered rat, but 2 deputies intercepted her before she reached the end of the street. "Barbara Jenkins," one announced, "you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, hiring armed impersonators, and endangering public safety." Her voice shrieked across the cul-de-sac. "You can't arrest me. I'm the HOA president. This is my neighborhood. But her words were drowned by the sound of handcuffs locking shut, phones captured every second. Some neighbors even cheered quietly from their porches. Others stood in stunned silence, realizing the clipboard queen who ruled over mailbox heights and lawn lengths had just been dethroned in the most public way possible. The truth comes out. The investigation unfolded fast. The three imposters cracked under questioning, confessing that Barbara had recruited them, promising easy money if they could scare Amy into leaving the neighborhood. The trench dug around our home? Her idea, too. She'd paid contractors under the table to intimidate us, hoping we'd sell. Barbara hadn't counted on Amy having hidden cameras installed around the property. Every shovel of dirt, every late-night whisper between hired men, all captured in crystal clarity. And now, that footage became evidence. The HOA board tried to distance themselves, stammering that Barbara acted alone. But neighbors weren't buying it. Meetings turned chaotic as residents demanded accountability, some resigning on the spot, others begging Amy to step in and clean house. But Amy didn't need the HOA's power. She had already dismantled it. The fallout: Barbara faced a storm of charges: fraud, harassment, criminal conspiracy, even impersonation of law enforcement through proxies. The judge didn't hesitate. She was sentenced, fined heavily, and stripped of every ounce of influence she once held. The imposters weren't so lucky either. Their plea deals involved jail time. Their faces splashed across local news as a cautionary tale. You don't impersonate officers, and you definitely don't cross someone like Amy. And Oakwood Heights? The HOA collapsed in the weeks that followed. Without Barbara's iron grip, the neighbors voted to dissolve it altogether. The fines, the petty rules, the harassment, it all vanished. The neighborhood breathed again. Our house, once surrounded by trenches meant to scare us out, now stood as a symbol of resistance. The trenches were filled in, the soil leveled, and in their place, Amy planted a small garden of sunflowers, her quiet way of saying, "We're not going anywhere." Epilogue: one evening, months later, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops, a neighbor approached our porch with his little girl tugging at his sleeve. "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson," he said quietly, "I just wanted to thank you. We were all too scared to speak up. But you," he gestured to Amy's uniform, her steady gaze, "you showed us that bullies only win if we let them." Amy smiled softly. Barbara thought she could bury us. Instead, she just exposed herself. The little girl handed Amy a sunflower she'd plucked from our garden. Amy tucked it into her pocket and nodded. For once, Oakwood Heights felt exactly like the community it pretended to be: peaceful, safe, and free. And as for us, we stayed, because this was our home. And no trench, no fraud, no clipboard tyrant could ever change that.